My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Summers, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode, a very special episode of ATP Weekly with me, Eddie, and I'm joined by Vanch here. And of course, we're going to have to talk about the story of the week, which was Bublik's run to the quarterfinals. No, of course, we're going to talk about, I don't know where to start, but the incredible final that we've just witnessed between Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner, the first final between the two at a major, and boy, wasn't it good? We already had high expectations, but did you really expect that it would be this good, Vanch?
No, and to be honest, these two have already set a pretty high bar. You know, the 2022 U.S. Open quarterfinal was one of the best matches I've seen this decade. And this eclipsed that and then some. So for them to put on the kind of display that they did for all 5 sets, and so many twists and turns, so many times I thought Sinner had it. So many times I thought Alcaraz had it. And then I went back to Sinner, and then I was like, no, actually Alcaraz can take it again. And then Sinner bounced another comeback in the 5th. So all throughout the while, there was the suspense, there was the drama, the athleticism was off the charts, the shot making down the stretch from 3-5 in the 5th all the way to the end was just like otherworldly tennis. Like, only these two on the tour are capable of it, and when you watch them play like this, it's like they're playing a different sport. So to see the way that it ended, obviously really high stakes as well for both of them, and it was the second longest major final ever, and one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. Forget about it being in a final, or it's, for me, this match is one of the best matches of all time. Like it's up there in that same territory as the 2008 Wimbledon final, or the 2012 Australian Open final between Djokovic and Nadal. Maybe the Borg McEnroe one in 1980. Like it's up there with those 3 or 4 or 5 marquee matches of all time in the Open era for me.
Yeah, so it really did live up to expectations and then some. I mean, going into the final, before the final, did you actually? I think I saw you maybe put a prediction up. Did you? What was your prediction? What was your expectation of how this match was going to go before the match?
Yeah, so coming in, I knew it was going to be way more competitive than Rome, just because I felt like Sinner was playing some of the best tennis I've seen him play. I mean, he hadn't dropped a single set. He was well tested against Djokovic, but didn't drop a set there. Alcaraz, meanwhile, was dropping a few sets throughout the tournament, but but still his path, you felt like, okay, like he's still going to get to the final, and then it's going to be about, can he like raise his level 2 or 3 notches from the Musetti match. And I kind of felt like it was going to be even between them. Like, I think I pretty much was like 51-49 Alcaraz, just because of the recent trajectory of the head-to-head, just a few intangibles that Carlos has on clay that Yannick doesn't. So it was very, very 50-50 for me. I picked Alcaraz in 5, but I did not expect a 2 sets to love comeback and championship points saved in the 4th. So
yeah, and I suppose I was thinking the same in terms of, like, I was expecting Sinner to do much better than in that previous matchup. Of course, when hadn't been back long since the break, obviously, from his suspension for 3 months. But still, he came and played a very good tournament. And in that final, yeah, it was competitive, but then Alcaraz ran away with it. This time, though, in this final, it started off quite differently in that it was Sinner who got the upper hand first. And it definitely felt to me early on, I felt like Alcaraz wasn't quite performing. I felt like obviously Sinner was playing well, but I felt Alcaraz was struggling a little bit on the return as well, especially. I thought on the second serve returns, he was eventually getting very frustrated about that. And I think later on, was it in the second or the third set where he got visibly angry about his performance in that respect, because Sinner wasn't actually serving brilliantly because he hadn't had that many first serves in, I think. But the rest of the tennis was very good. But it was Sinner who was very much on top at the beginning. And even when obviously Sinner went up 2 sets. At that point, did you think basically that it was over?
Well, so initially, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like the first serves were not landing in for Yannick, and Carlos had so many chances. He finally converts on his 7th break point. He goes up 3-2, but then it completely flips. Like Sinner wins 9 of the next 11 games, and Carlos, for a brief period there, it was just looking like he didn't quite have the quality from the back of the court, because Sinner was the one who was moving, like his running forehand was so much better than it was in Rome. And I felt like he was neutralizing a lot of the points, and his superior ball striking was getting into play. And Alcaraz, I didn't feel like was in a position really to mix up the heights and spins and bring the kind of variety that I thought he would, because the match was being played on Sinner's terms. And Alcaraz was struggling on his return, like you were saying. So for a while there, it looked very bleak, 6-4, 5-2. But then I felt like the comeback that Alcaraz made in that set, even though he didn't win the set, I felt like that was big, because that gave him some belief that, okay, like this is going to be a competitive match now. And if he can stretch this into the 3rd or 4th hour, there was that stat that like Sinner hadn't won a match over 4 hours or 3 hours and 50 minutes. Obviously, the sample size isn't like huge. And the 3 majors that he won, he was never really pushed beyond the 3.5 hour mark ever. Like the longest match he played was the Medvedev final. And that was, 2 different matches basically. And it was the 2 sets to love comeback, but it didn't go super long. So you've still felt like, okay, maybe Sinner is untested in that territory, whereas Alcaraz has a brilliant 5-set record. He was 12-1, and that he's won majors like last year from 2 sets to 1 down in both the semis and the final. So you still felt like there was a physical question mark. The longer the match went, you probably favored Alcaraz, but at the same time, Alcaraz had never come back from 2 sets to love down himself. He was 0-8. So yeah. There was that. But once Sinner went up a break, that's when I was really looking like, okay, like this is going to be over in straight sets if Alcaraz doesn't find some magic somehow. And after that, it really turned, because then he broke serve twice. And Sinner, I think, had a game point to go up 2-love. And I feel like he didn't consolidate his break there. So that gave Alcaraz a bit of a window, and he didn't hold serve at 1-2, 40-15. And he had 3 game points in that game.
Do you think Sinner let the foot off the gas a little bit at that moment?
I think a little bit. I think he made a couple of loose errors at 40-30 that allowed Alcaraz to then, I think, feel a little bit more confident and comfortable from the back of the court. And now you suddenly felt like the longer the rallies went, actually it was Sinner who was starting to doubt himself a little bit more. Maybe he was starting to feel the moment a little bit. So I feel like those 4 games in the 3rd set that really shifted the tide. However, though, Alcaraz served for the 3rd set, right? He served for it at 5-3. So, and he didn't break there. So I still felt like, okay, Sinner is back on track, because he's going to be serving at 4-5 in the 3rd. And right now, this was reminding me of the Djokovic semi, because I was like, this is kind of what it was there, where it was like tightish 2nd and 3rd set, but Yannick can still finish this in straights. And then actually Carlos played a really inspired return game. And he just, that return game that he played at 4-5 was, that was the key for him to come back into the match and actually believe that he could extend it to the 4th hour. So at that point I was like, okay, maybe we're in for a really good finish here.
Yeah, for me, it was, yeah. I mean, especially when, when obviously it was very early on in the set, but it did feel like when Sinner went up that early break, you're thinking, oh no, this is going to be a short match, and it's going to be a disappointing first match between these two, because obviously so much expectation, so much hype. And even when Alcaraz got that third set, I was still thinking, well, I think there's a chance here that Sinner will turn the screw a little bit and actually get it done in the fourth. And of course, he did actually come close to very much taking that fourth set. Obviously, we've already had some comments about that and the comments there on the YouTube chat. So he had 3 championship points, right? Love 40 on the Alcaraz serve. At that point, you really are thinking, well, surely he's going to get it done. And even if he didn't at that point, you're thinking he's probably going to be able to serve it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, 99.9% chance it was over by then. Like,
right. I mean, I'm not a betting man, but I wonder if anyone put a bet on Alcaraz at that point to win the match. It probably would have been a good bit to do that. But but I mean, I mean, it's really hard to put into words. I mean, what it felt like at that point, just suddenly something kicked into gear for Alcaraz, right? For Carlos. I mean, it was like he just found another level, which I remember thinking, like, at some point it sort of clicked for him, and I felt like, why was he not doing this earlier in the match? But but somehow he managed to find that. So what are your memories of? I mean, there's a score on the screen there. Yeah, obviously, 3-5 on the Alcaraz serve, love 40. What do you remember from that point?
Well, at that point, I mean, Alcaraz was really struggling in that game. I mean, he wasn't making first serves, and you felt like it was over. So at that point, really, like, love 40, Alcaraz hits this really vicious inside in forehand that like forces Sinner way behind the baseline and way into the tram line. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, Alcaraz is in a good position to save this first one. Sinner misses a forehand, but you can definitely call that a forced error. But then at 15-40, I think this is the one Sinner wants back, because it was a second serve return to the backhand, and he was trying to go inside in, but he missed it long, and that's normally a return that Sinner makes like 95% of the time.
Right.
So for him, that's probably the one that he wants back off the 3 match points. On the third one, though, Sinner did have a really attacking forehand opportunity, because he pushed Alcaraz behind the baseline, and it was like sort of a mid-court forehand that Sinner had. And he hit this one really hard, this forehand. Like, he hit it with a lot of depth, a lot of quality, pretty deep, but Carlos just absorbs it. And Sinner's pushed back behind the baseline trying to hit a forehand, but he didn't put enough spin on it, so it landed in the net. And at that point, it was like, okay, like, that's sort of, it depends on who's scoring it. Maybe that's a forced error, but the first forehand, Sinner maybe, like, he didn't get enough width on it, so Alcaraz was able to get there quickly and sort of absorb it with his height on the forehand. And then Carlos was just inspired. He hit an ace and then a really rocket forehand winner down the line. And then all of a sudden, like, the crowd just started going crazy. And the Alcaraz comeback was really in the cards, because he knew the next service game was going to be so hard for Sinner after having those 3 championship points. Like, it's impossible not to think about that when you're serving out for the title. So I think at that point, it was like there was some real life in the match again. And
right, exactly. I mean, although you kind of, and especially given how well he's played in the tournament so far, although you kind of expected at that point, Sinner might be able to, probably will be able to serve it out. It was the atmosphere that was building in the stadium. The crowd were going wild. They really wanted to see a 5th set. Yeah. And I mean, Alcaraz as well was playing to the crowd as well, trying to whip them up, and they were responding. So at that point, I mean, of course, you're thinking, Sinner's gonna maybe feel some pressure here, and of course, he did get broken, right?
I mean, and also one other thing I realized, I was thinking about 2022 U.S. Open, because Sinner also served for the 4th set there at 5-4, and I just wonder if, like, that also played into it, where, like, these previous tight matches that he's lost against Carlos, if that was somewhere lurking in the back of his mind, because he knew, like, it was urgent that he had to that he maybe should have won it already, and
Yeah.
that Alcaraz was going to be really dangerous. He's like the hardest guy to finish off.
And let's not, and also we have to remember as well. Last year he lost to Carlos, the 5-setter, right?
Yeah, exactly. 2-1 up, and serving to stay in the fourth at 4-5, and he had it like an overhead at 30-15. So I wonder if those previous matches, like in that moment, somewhere in the back of your mind, like there is some scar tissue for Yannick in this rivalry. And yeah, the producer's mentioning the match point. Yeah, he had a match point 5-4, in the fourth on his serve.
I remember that well, and I remember thinking, because at that point it was more Carlos who would have been favoured again, and probably again slightly in this matchup, maybe at Roland Garros. But at that point, Carlos was a bit more ahead, and I felt like Sinner had done really well in that match, and it kind of took me by surprise how it turned round. Alcaraz just found an extra gear and managed to turn it around, and yeah, something similar happened again. And if like you said that those other previous matches were playing on Sinner's mind, then I wonder how this match is going to affect him. We can maybe talk about that a bit later, but
sure.
But like going into that, obviously Alcaraz does break back, and then we go into a 4-set tiebreak that finishes with an Alcaraz winning it. What do you think about that particular tiebreak and the how they performed there? And
yeah, if I remember correctly, Sinner went up 2-love, and then Alcaraz won 7 of the next 8 points. But what was key was, one, he hit a really good inside. He hit a really good cross-court forehand winner to make it 1-2. And then I hope this doesn't get lost in the shuffle, but Alcaraz hit 2 aces in a row from 1-2. And that's not something you see from Alcaraz very often, but he's done it. But he did it in the first set tiebreak in Rome. He had 2 aces there, and he does it again here in a really big tiebreak against Yannick. So I thought that was really, really clutch, because all of a sudden now the tiebreak had a different complexion, and Sinner felt some pressure at 2-3, and he missed a couple of shots that you don't expect him to miss. And all of a sudden Alcaraz was super inspired, and he takes it 7 points to 3, and he finishes it with a beautiful forehand winner. So at this point, it's like, now you're going into the fifth, and Alcaraz has all the momentum.
And this is, you talk about how clutch he was there. I mean, we've seen this before in previous matches with Carlos. And at points where he's not played particularly well, maybe earlier in the match, but then when it mattered, he's just clutched it out, and then he finds a level. I mean, I'm thinking about, thinking back to his match against Zverev, Roland Garros last, that was also a similar kind of match like that. And obviously this match was much higher level. But I think as well in that 4th set, what I felt was towards the end as well, I mean, maybe it was more a mental thing, but it seemed like Sinner was tiring a bit. And so
he definitely was. The early stages of the 5th, he looked fatigued. And
yeah,
it looked like, for instance, there were a lot of drop shots that he was not able to read or get to, or his first serve really fell off in the first game, and that was also a sign with Yannick sometimes, because he went like 0-for-6 on first serves in the first game. And I mean, this was worse than the first part of the first set when Sinner wasn't making first serves. Like, this was fatigue related, I think.
Yeah, I felt like he was a step slower as well. Yeah, and just like sort of at the baseline laterally as well. Just like, whereas he's not as quick as Alcaraz maybe, but Alcaraz, you felt like the opposite. He was finding an extra step, and I mean, and so I did not feel very hopeful, and I felt like Sinner might fall away in the 5th set, and of course Alcaraz does go up an early break, and I was thinking, well, could this be a short set? But
yeah,
it didn't quite turn out.
I will say the dip that Sinner had physically, it didn't last very long. Because already at 2-1, he was creating opportunities, he was moving better, and you felt like Alcaraz, there might be another twist coming, because Sinner was, just starting to feel his legs again. And even though he didn't break in that game, I started to think like, okay, like the way this match has gone on, like surely it's not going to be like 6-3 or 6-4 Carlos, because surely it's just that kind of match, and Sinner and it doesn't take much for Alcaraz's level to drop again. So I still kind of felt like maybe there's a route back for Sinner because he got so close to breaking. And then also at 3-2 30 all, there was that like they played out the whole point, but I think Hawkeye later showed that the second serve was out. So at that point it was like, okay, like he didn't get that call right there, but 4-2, like Sinner held very comfortably, and you're kind of thinking like, okay, actually, like Yannick is fine physically. Like those question marks that we had, I think you can put this one in a different category, even though he still hasn't won a match over 4 hours. This isn't like the other matches where you basically knew in the start of the fifth that Sinner was going to be toast.
I agree.
I think he showed more physical durability and endurance this time than any other time I've seen.
Yeah, and I agree, because obviously, like at the end of the fourth set, we talked about he might seem a bit tired, and I thought like maybe at the start of the fifth, but it became clear that he was ready for the fight and had got his energy, and he was competing, and I felt at that point, he will, even though he was broken, I felt like, I think he managed to hold, and after that, I felt like he will actually be able to get his chances to break back, and he eventually did, and also at a particularly key moment in the match with Alcaraz serving for the fifth set and the match. So what do you? I mean, let's talk us through that then. I mean, that point in the match.
Oh, I mean, back then, I just felt like Sinner was so inspired, and he was starting to feel like, okay, like I must make a surge here. I must be aggressive and not allow Alcaraz opportunities with his kick serve. And that's when I felt like, the backhand down the line was working. He was taking away the Alcaraz kick serve, which is big, because obviously Alcaraz's kick serve on the surface, man, that really jumps up, and it bothers a lot of players. But Sinner has one of the best backhands, and he can take it early, and it wasn't working for him all the time. I still felt like Alcaraz had plenty of success on the second serve, but at this particular point, he was reading it, Sinner, and he was on it. And the first 2 points, I mean, it was just like Sinner forcing Alcaraz mistakes, and then 15-30, Alcaraz goes for this drop shot, and Sinner gets there in one bounce somehow. He chases that down, and he manages to just with his soft hands, I think barely just before it was about to bounce the second time. Now Alcaraz, I thought, would actually come forward there, and I thought he would cover the drop. I thought he would cover the redrop, or at least try to to come to the net and maybe go for a lob, or he usually does that after drop shots, but I think he literally did not expect Yannick to get there. So
I mean, I was surprised that he just made it, but then also for him to have such a deft touch at that moment, I think I actually just laughed, because I was like, I just can't believe there was this, he was still going, and that there was going to be another twist in the match, and and it was good actually that, I mean, although he didn't end up winning, but it was good to see that. I mean, it made the match so exciting that he was able to come back like that, and of course he does get the break back, and then he has to hold though.
And that hold was tough, right? Couple of deuces. Alcaraz was at this point, they were both just playing really good tennis at the same time. So at this point, the tennis was just off the charts, and Sinner came up with some spectacular forehands at deuce. One inside in forehand that I remember that really wrong-footed Alcaraz, and then another point where he just, again, like the forehand was just, and he was able to find more width on it, on the forehands, and that's where I felt like Alcaraz probably separated himself a little bit more. Again, is just like the width and angles that Alcaraz can create on the forehand on this surface. Whereas for Sinner, it's all about like early aggression, taking away Alcaraz's time, and it's that linear, deep, flat pace that kind of takes away, that sets up the short ball for him. But here, I feel like he looked quick again, and he looked springy, and he looked like the player more likely to win at this point, because Alcaraz serving at 5-6, surely, like, he must come up with some magic in the next game, and that's exactly what he had to do.
Yeah.
Wait, I actually want to answer a couple of the comments, because the producer's asking if there's any times that a player has had match points against the same player twice and lost. I mean, immediately I think of Federer, because he lost the 2019 Wimbledon final, and then also 2011 US Open, 2010 US Open. So it's probably Roger when it comes to that. And then I think there was another comment. The producer's asking, did that call change the result? Honestly, no, probably not, because Sinner could have stopped the point. So it was only like after the point was played that he sort of like gesture to the umpire, like, wait, wasn't that second serve out? So it's probably really hard to tell in the moment. But I think if you had electronic line calling, I mean, obviously that would solve that issue.
Yeah, but even that's controversial. There's always controversy.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's another
because they
conversation.
used it in the other tournaments, and then I think the RG is a little bit more traditional in that sense, and so umpires.
Did the producer asking, did the Alcaraz serve game go to deuce? You mean the one at 5-6?
The one at 5-6. Yeah, it did. At 5-6, it went to deuce.
Yeah.
And but seriously, the points that I would remember is like at 15:30. I think this was the only opportunity that Sinner had in that game. The rest was all Alcaraz magic. But at 15:30, Sinner, I think, had a mid-court forehand that he missed in the net. And this was after he did a good job, like kind of returning the kick serve, recovering back to the middle. So maybe that was like the only unforced error that he made. But aside from that, I mean, the 30 all point was just ridiculous. That forehand squash shot that Alcaraz came up with that just somehow landed cross court on the sideline.
Oh, that was, yeah. I mean, that was because I felt like Sinner had hit that return so well.
It was such a good return, like one of the best returns he hit all match.
And we hadn't seen Alcaraz yet do anything like that, but yeah, somehow he just read it, and it was just good enough and perfectly placed and awkward in that far corner. And at that moment, I thought, this is not going to go well. That was in my mind. I was like, this Alcaraz is I felt like one of the differences between them two, is Alcaraz is, he is more athletic as a player, and I felt like he really, and yeah, he's got a little bit more. You were talking about the angles as well, and also like his little bit in his racket skills as well. He's got a bit more to it, and I felt like he just.
That's pretty like just improvisational genius, like
yeah. And but it all came out at that moment at the end of the match, and like I can and it was just like he was as if I'm gonna have to do it all now, or I'm not gonna win this match, and he just executed perfectly. It was unbelievable, really.
It was outrageous to watch, and then Sinner kind of acted like nothing happened, because then he just belted a second serve return winner on the backhand. Took away the kick serve again, and that was plumb on the line. So now Sinner is still 2 points away, and it's deuce. And Alcaraz still has to come up with more magic. And that's what he did the last 2 points in the game. I mean, just like ridiculous shot making and winners. And there was that backhand pass that he hit on game point, like where he somehow found this absurd angle, and Sinner came forward. It was a very good approach. And
that's right, yeah.
And Alcaraz just passes him with a clean winner. I could not believe that shot.
That's also him. I mean, not only was it ridiculously well executed, that's also him. He kind of knew what Sinner was doing, and just almost before he even made the approach, he was like, "I'm going to pass you like this," and yeah, it was just amazing actually. And yeah, I mean, what can you say about the tiebreak? I mean,
we saw Beijing right between these two, and Sinner was up 3-love in that tiebreak, and Alcaraz won 7 points in a row, and like 5 or 6 of those were just spectacular Alcaraz shots that only he can do. And somehow he outdid himself. Like the first 7, he went up 7-0 in this tiebreak. And he just somehow the backhand down the line, he made like 3 really great backhand down the lines. And
yeah,
there was the drop shot point at 3-love that everybody talks about, where Sinner just barely gets there, and then he hits a pretty decent slice approach that's going pretty deep, but maybe it's going out, but Alcaraz hits it anyway. He hits like a swing volley winner across court. His forehand did so much damage in the first 2 or 3 points, and it was just like Alcaraz just went up like to a 15 out of 10 level, like only he can do. Like, how like most players in the big moments, they kind of dial it back, like they kind of play it a little bit safer. Like Alcaraz is not from that cloth, he just backs himself to the nth degree in these moments. And it's not that Sinner doesn't. It's just that Alcaraz just has this other gear of athleticism that I think is just,
you
can't teach it. Like it's so special.
And is that going to be a problem for Sinner in this matchup going forward? I do wonder.
Because that's now 5 in a row, and 4 of those from after he's won the first set, and he's normally such a good front runner. And basically, Alcaraz is the only guy that Sinner's losing to, right? Like the last 40 seconds. The last 50 matches, it's like whatever. It's like 47-0 against everybody else, and 0-3 against Alcaraz. So.
Yeah, it's
and it's a little weird because I mean Sinner like it's kind of reversed because a couple of years ago Alcaraz was world number 1 and he was so much better than Sinner against the rest of the field, but he struggled against Carlos. And now it's like the other way around where Sinner is so much better against the field than even Alcaraz, and then he can't beat Carlos.
Yeah, and I think it's just the one victory of Sinner against Alcaraz in a slam, and that was at Wimbledon. That was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, 2022.
So,
and
and
then he went up 2-0 on Djokovic in the next round, and then but very, very different stage for sure.
One thing I wanted to say was one Sinner stat that I think is crazy and shows how good he is and mentally as well, is that he only hit 2 double faults in the whole tournament.
Yeah, that blew my mind, honestly. Like 2 in the entire tournament.
And in this match, didn't hit a single double fault.
That's crazy, because also you look at the stats and Alcaraz won 57% of his second serve points, but he double faulted 7 times. And
right.
Sinner won fewer than Alcaraz and he double faulted 0. Like I don't think that's pretty rare.
Yeah. Hit 8 aces, no double faults, and that's just insane, really. I mean, maybe he was taking a bit off on those second serves, but I mean, I think that was also maybe, especially earlier on. I mean, Alcaraz wasn't able to take advantage of some of those second serves. He was hitting a lot of them long, those returns, and anyway, that was we moved. Obviously, got much better later in the match, but
I think later in the match Alcaraz adjusted because in the beginning I felt like he wasn't sure. He was missing some returns when he was standing in, and then he was missing some when he was way back and he wasn't calibrating the forehand properly. But then I think later on in the fifth he kind of settled, and then he realized like actually I can get a lot of spin and height on this ball with the deep return position, and I think he started using that more and more, and then that's when he could actually use his variety a bit more.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this rivalry goes.
From both of them was just really great. The whole final, like both of them were just giving each other the benefit of the doubt when it came to the line calls and racing the mark and being the first to do it. And I mean, really, it was such a they're always just such class acts when they play against each other.
Yeah,
they kind of embrace the whole rivalry. I mean, Sinner's speech was just for a guy who had just lost a 5.5-hour match. I mean, you can't really get a lot classier than that. So
yeah, it was just a beautiful the whole occasion. I mean, yeah, they were so sporting to each other, but also we didn't have any like timeouts, and actually they just got on with it. For a 5-hour 29-minute match.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't leave the court before the start of the fifth, and they just started playing immediately. Like that's kind of rare.
Yeah, and I thought maybe, Sinner might take a break after the fourth or something, but no, didn't happen. And I mean, maybe he prefers to just sort of stay in, stay in the zone, like sort of, keep that adrenaline going. But yeah, I mean, interesting. What it says, this is exactly like Lendl and McEnroe in the past, and this rivalry. McEnroe lost 7 straight to Lendl, then won 8 of the last 9, and lost a whole bunch again.
We'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting if they play on a faster court for sure, because the one thing you could say if you're a Jannik Sinner fan is like most of these matches have been on clay recently, and like 3 of them on clay, and then
that's true,
which is a hard court. It's like medium pace, but maybe definitely on the slower side. And Indian Wells, for instance, like which is where Alcaraz has a little bit more time to kind of maneuver the ball around.
I mean, I guess I could put a positive spin on it from Sinner's point of view, in that it was on clay, right? So maybe he did, like, obviously being up 2 sets and having match points in the fourth. I mean, obviously it's going to sting, but going forward, you would say, like, he's actually probably exceeded a lot of people's expectations maybe before going into the tournament in terms of how he's performed here, at the French Open. So, yeah, I mean, obviously goes on to grass season next, and it's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people are going to be anticipating that they will meet again in the final. I mean, do you have any thoughts? Do you think that will happen?
At this point, like they're so far ahead of the rest of the field that I could see it. I mean, on grass, obviously, there's more variability just because the margins are
Mhm.
slimmer, and so like maybe the chances of an upset are always a little bit more on grass just because it's more unpredictable. Yeah, and like some tiebreak sets can go either way. Like last year, Sinner wasn't exactly 100%. He loses to Medvedev. Like Carlos almost lost to Tiafo in the third round. Like
Yeah. The serve
I think
element.
here at Roland Garros, it seemed very likely that we were going to get that final. But at Wimbledon, I would say slightly less sure, but I think it's still likely.
Yeah.
But like Djokovic will also like his chances to go pretty deep. I think Jack Draper is going to be relishing the grass court season. There'll be some more pressure on him for sure. But aside from that, I mean, there's not like a whole lot of players who've really mastered grass.
No. Yeah, and it's going to be probably Draper and Djokovic, if anyone is going to sort of outside of those two, going to be able to have even a thought of challenging for the title. But I mean, I still put them. Even Djokovic, I'm sort of after this match, I'm thinking like it's going to be hard. They're going to have maybe a bad day at the office for him to get a win over one of them. But yeah, but we'll wait to see how that goes. But let's think about. I mean, where do you rank this match in terms of like the best Grand Slam matches of all time? I mean, it is up there, right?
It definitely is. Like, it has to be top 5. Like, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I can really only put it in the same category as 2008 Wimbledon and 2012 Australian Open, really. And I wasn't really around to know, to like, I've seen highlights and I've seen a few points of Lendl McEnroe, but I'm probably not the best judge of that one.
Right.
And same with Borg McEnroe 1980. I know the first set was like 6-1, but then after that it was an epic. So I don't know, but in terms of like the speed that they were playing at, and in terms of like the video game tennis here, it's like they're taking tennis to a whole other level when it comes to like just how much, I don't think looking at the winners and unforced errors would really do this justice, just because the line between a forced and unforced error really depends on who is kind of it's more of a subjective call, and also with how hard and they hit and how well they move. It would just be very surprising if they actually finished both of them with more winners.
Michael Walker in the comments says, I was at the Australian Open 2012, no comparison. As in, I think he thinks this match is the best. As in,
this one is better, or that one is better.
He said number 1, so I'm
okay. Number 1, yeah. I mean, you could argue it, right? Like, if someone were to argue this was the best match they've ever seen, like I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel, the last match that I felt like this afterwards was probably the Wimbledon 2019 final. That was similar in terms of the drama and the quality. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably put this particular match higher than that.
I would definitely put it higher than 2019. I think the storyline was big though because of the the 2-swing thing from Federer's perspective, like Djokovic getting that, and Federer not converting, and then also but at the same time that match did have like they really only played well at the same time in the 5th. And maybe the first as well.
Yeah, I think this one was so astonishing because of obviously it looked like Sinner was maybe going to get this done easily, and then it just progressively got more competitive and more dramatic, and then you were thinking like, is it going to dip at the end? But no, the quality just increased in that 5th set, and it was just unbelievable in a way. Just totally exceeded everyone's expectations, and it's definitely one that I'm going to remember for a long time. And well, who knows? I mean, maybe they're going to have another epic soon at some point. But I mean, 2008 was also particularly special, the Wimbledon match, because of also the storyline, and that it was obviously Nadal's first victory over Federer at Wimbledon, first Wimbledon title. So, and yeah, but the last set was also very dramatic as well, and they went on until it was dark. I always remember that, like it was almost because they didn't have the floodlights, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was played. The last couple of games were played in the dark.
Yeah, and so was it 9-7 in the final set?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
course,
that match
yeah.
will always be like, and at that time, Nadal getting closer and closer at Wimbledon 2006, 2007, and then 2008 he finally gets it done. But the comeback from Federer, and obviously, like it was hailed as like the changing of the guard moment. But then Federer just wins the U.S. Open, and then they kind of go back and forth.
I think the question now is is this for Sinner? Is it more like a 2007 like final Wimbledon?
I was thinking about that.
Is he going to get over the line at some point in a big win over Alcaraz? Or I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think he's always going to have more chances because it's clear at this moment in time those two are so far ahead of the rest of the field that it's just actually a bit scary. But and he's so consistent the rest of the time that
he's like super reliable to always get there and put himself in a position to face Carlos, and just his base level is just so much higher than anybody else's that you just feel like at some point, in a best of 3 or best of 5 just will favor Carlos just a little bit more, just with the ebbs and flows, But in best of 3, surely there'll be a time where like Alcaraz just, is a little bit more fluctuating, and Sinner is just steady the whole time, and he just maintains like a 9.5 out of 10 the whole time. Because so far, like there have been times where this match has reminded me a lot of Roger and Novak, where like Roger's the one who's a bit more artistic, coming up with the flare shots, and he's a little more up and down. But usually the clutcher player was Novak in those big matches, and here it's like kind of, Alcaraz is able to have this balls to the walls mentality down match points in some of these occasions, and he's able to kind of find that extra gear, which is just extraordinary. Like you think that can't happen like 7-8 times in a row. It's happened 5 times. So surely, like law of averages, like it just has to work in Sinner's favor at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comparison there is apt. It's a different level now, though, in terms of I feel like the power that they get on the ball at times is it's gone up a notch. I mean whether you think that's better or not in terms of like
they're definitely hitting it faster and harder, and
that's another issue in terms of like
it's almost like I'm watching the big 3 on YouTube in 2 times speed.
And in general, like the athleticism it's just gone up a notch in general. And so like these guys are competing against other guys who are also all, for the most part, very good athletes, even if they might not match them on the tennis court. So it's an interesting time. And only thing that, I just hope that maybe if we're looking forward, like that, it might be nice if there were some other players that would come through and challenge them a little bit. At the moment, it seems like a little bit off, far off. But I mean, we talk about Menchik and Fonseca and these guys, but they've got a lot of development to go still. But yeah, for now, it's the Yannick and Carlos show.
It really is. Like these are the new 2, or like they've won the last 6 slams. They've split them evenly. Aside from that, I mean, surely some Masters 1000s occasionally like can be won by some other players, but the idea that like the tour is completely like it's unpredictable, and like there's no clear players at the top, like that's probably true outside of these 2 guys.
Yeah, and I suppose you can look at that 2 ways and say this is it's great. Maybe some people say it's not good to have 2 players just so dominant, but I mean, I can't really think about that too much now after that final. It was so entertaining.
That's, I mean, I'm going to be probably watching highlights of this again, and hopefully the French Open can upload the full match again. Like it's I can't believe the grass season is already here. And
yeah, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was so good. I mean, I was almost ready to, getting ready. It started late here. Like, I'm tired now. I'm going to be honest. I'm in Seoul, in South Korea. The match started here at 10 p.m. and so it went on to like after 3, right?
Yeah.
I was ready to start ready to go to my bed in that third set. And yeah, but they just kept on playing, and I kept on watching because I just felt like I had to. There was no way I was going to stop watching when it was so exciting like that. And but yeah, of course, you are on the other side of the world. You're in San Diego in California, right? Is that right?
So I woke up at 6 a.m. But so for me it basically finished around lunchtime.
Okay, good. I mean, yeah, you got it with your breakfast. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just tennis, and that's the way it is. It never stops. It's always going on around the world as well. And yeah, now we've just got yeah. So the grass season going on. We've got like we've got the men's tennis. We've got Stuttgart, and we've got the Rosmalen. Yeah, Dragonbosch. Yeah. And I mean, before they talk about that, though, is there anything you want to else talk about?
I mean, as far as the rest of the tournament goes, I mean, I think we can touch on Novak because he won his 100th title in Geneva. He makes it to the semis here. Pretty good draw. A good showing from him. We're still seeing kind of in the majors he's showing up and getting to the semis the last couple now. Obviously the win over Zverev was kind of a tactical masterclass from him in the last 3 sets, and also
Hi everyone. I don't know what happened to Eddie and Van. Technical issue, but I am here just to step in their absence for a couple of minutes. I think it might have been a fault on my end as producer, so I apologize for that. But fingers crossed they will rejoin. I'm just going to send them a WhatsApp right now. Don't know what happened. Can you rejoin? What's this from Damien? Damien's also giving us something about yesterday's final. Let's imagine someone said, oh, okay, yeah. I won't share that with you now. But anyway, you do get voting in our poll on who you think or which match you consider to have been the best of all time as we await Vanch and Eddie's return. Also, whether you think Yannick Sinner, will there be a reaction, as in a negative reaction to this? My feeling is that there won't be, or at least there won't be a bad one from him. I think we'll see a generally positive one, slightly different to how I see Sabalenka. I think that one might be more of a hangover for her. As for Novak, some questions obviously being posed about his immediate and even long-term future. Do you think he'll get to 25 Grand Slams? I think there's more reasons for optimism after he pushed Yannick pretty close. I mean, all 3 sets were super competitive, and I would suspect that actually gives him a better chance going forward. I would suggest that gives him a better chance going forward. In Wimbledon, that's what it's all about for me. If he can produce here on the clay and go as close as he did to Sinner here, why not just have a 2 or 3% more chance on the grass, I would suggest, which probably in terms of how they match up, I think that would probably swing a little bit in Novak's favor. And then you might be getting 4 or 5 sets. Can Novak beat both Yannick and Carlos back to back? Well, that's another thing, but he might not have to. He might not have to. We'll see how Yannick deals with this setback, but also how he deals with the upcoming grass court season. That'll be something for him to ponder. And also, you guys in the live chat, do let me know if you've got any strong thoughts on that. Regarding the rest of the French Open, what were the other talking points? I guess Lorenzo Musetti winning or getting as far as the semi-final, but some physical issues on his part will, obviously be of a concern. Let me just, hopefully you can hear me all right as well. Yeah, good. I'm hoping that we get Vanch and Eddie back. Just going to write to them now, still live. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get them back in a moment. Hopefully I've written that in the right group. Yeah. Lorenzo Musetti making the semi-finals. I guess that's his limit right now. Do we see him be able to go on further in his career? Do we see him potentially winning a Grand Slam anytime soon? I still think there's a gap between him and players such as Yannick and Carlos, and possibly also physically as well, as we saw him fade away in that semi-finals. But his clay court season has been very impressive. However, it has a bridesmaid feel to it, doesn't it? In terms of semi-finals in Rome, losing to Carlos, final in Monte Carlo, losing to Carlos, semi-final in Madrid as well. And so that's where we're at with Lorenzo right now. And although he made a Wimbledon semi-final last year, I think that might give us slight deceptions in terms of him and his grass court game and where he'll end up. Any other stories? Well, Bublik, I guess, is the other huge sort of big story, I guess, from the tournament, making the quarterfinals on a surface you wouldn't necessarily associate Bublik with epic runs on, I would suggest. And so, yeah, that's kind of my feelings on Bublik. But I mean, that win over Draper was everything and so much more in many respects in terms of his tournament. But when he comes up against Yannick, like Lehecka did, and like Casper Ruud did in Rome, he found it very tough going from the first moment. Actually, something that I think Novak can take forward in terms of the fact that I think Novak can obviously take a lot of heart from how close he pushed. Yannick Sinner in that French Open semi-final. I know it was 3 sets, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like it was much more competitive. Okay, what other stories? Let me just have a quick look at some other French Open stories. I mean, Draper, probably. Are we disappointed with his run when he gets to the 4th round or quarterfinal, before losing to Bublik? Yeah, maybe. But I also think that he'd never won a match at the French Open before. So in many ways, that's, kind of where he's at in the 4th round. That I think a 4th round is still a decent effort. Maybe we were deceived a little bit by his heroics elsewhere on the clay, particularly in Madrid. But I think the conditions suiting Jack a lot more in Madrid than they did elsewhere. Disappointing tournament maybe for De Minaur, losing in 5 sets to the aforementioned Bublik, having had a really consistent run. So he lost in the second round, De Minaur to Bublik, whereas before that, I think he had a string of quarterfinal results. But Bublik obviously, so Jack Draper, he beat in the 4th round there after losing the first set, but ultimately prevailing in 4. It looks like we're not going to get Eddie and Vanch back. I don't know if they've not realised the technical issue that occurred, but anyway, I am here just to round things off. The grass court season now, of course, is about to get underway. We have tournaments, I think, in Stuttgart and in the Netherlands as well, which actually already have got underway. We obviously had challengers last week in Birmingham, and also I think there's one elsewhere this week. But yeah, upcoming tournaments, of course, in Stuttgart and in the aforementioned Netherlands. Got a comment here in the live chat. Hi, Nerlan. A little bit late for the party, but welcome on board. Anyway, just want to say thanks for everyone for joining today, and particularly reflecting on that final between Sinner and Alcaraz, which was obviously phenomenal. Do let me know in the comment section below in terms of where you think this ranks in terms of finals. But for everybody else, you know the drill.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.